Lead them to the cave.
Hello, welcome back to another episode. Today I'm going to talk about and review Injustice 2. I've been playing Injustice 2 for the last week off and on. I finished the story mode of Injustice 2, and out of everything I have to say off the bat, Injustice 2 is an incredible, fantastic game. It's a fantastic fighting game. And just overall, you should play it if you're a fan of fighting games in general, but if you're a fan of just even like Mortal Kombat or any fighting game, but also if you're a fan of DC, if you're a fan of superhero stories, especially good superhero stories, like good what-if superhero stories, and that's what Injustice has been since the beginning, is probably the greatest what-if superhero story of all time, and Injustice 2 only ups it that much more. I've been playing Injustice 2 here on the PS4, and one thing I will say off the bat, before I dive into the game, before I talk about how much I love this game and how good it is, I will say that this is a shining example of what the PlayStation 4 Pro should be doing. The only PlayStation 4 Pro game that I've played up until this point that I really felt the PlayStation 4 Pro was worth it, and I bought one at launch, by the way, is Horizon Zero Dawn. I think Horizon Zero Dawn is one of the greatest and best looking games I've ever played. Injustice 2 here is that much better. The facial animations in this game are the best of any facial animations I've seen in a game in probably ever, honestly, at this point. Maybe in Uncharted 4 last year had really good facial animations. The facial animations, the graphics, everything here in Injustice 2 is just utterly jaw-dropping at times. PlayStation 4 Pro aside, you can still get this experience on your standard base PS4 and it looks just as good. I believe the PlayStation 4 Pro ups it to resolution of 1440p, which is like halfway between 4K and not 4K, I guess would be the easiest way to say it. And then obviously the game maintains 60 frames regardless of PS4 or PS4 Pro. I believe the game runs at 900p on Xbox One. I didn't play that version. Not that I dislike... And again, one thing you've seen probably since I've started this channel is I've played a lot of PS4 games. I've reviewed a lot of PS4 stuff. And a lot of my backlog is PS4 games. And that's not to say I'm at any ways dislike the Xbox One at all. I actually love the Xbox One. I have an Xbox One S over here. And I have played games on the Xbox One. I started this generation as an Xbox One person. Since day one, I was into the system. I was actually into the ideas that system brought before the internet had their meltdown about some of the negative aspects of the Xbox One. I don't want anybody out here to think that I hate the Xbox One or anything like that. I've just been playing a lot more games on the PS4 lately, and especially fighting games. I am super attached to the DualShock controller for a fighting game. That's what I played a lot of Mortal Kombat back on PS1 with like Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 and stuff like that. And I've always been accustomed to the D-pad on the PlayStation controller. It's just so much better than the D-pad on the Xbox controller. The Xbox controllers never really had a great D-pad. I will admit the D-pad on the Xbox One controller and the Elite controller, if you have an Elite controller, I do. It's better, and it's a step in the right direction, but it just doesn't feel as good as the D-pad on the PlayStation controller. Hence why I'm playing Injustice 2 on the PS4. But enough about systems and system wars and fanboyism and all that stuff. I don't claim to be a fanboy of any system. Let's talk about Injustice 2. Injustice 2 picks up 5 years after the events of Injustice 1. If you haven't read the spiraling out of control now comic series, I did through the 5 years, and then I dived out because it started to spin off into all different directions and different mini-series and stuff, and it got to the point where I just don't care anymore. I just wanted to play Injustice 2. The story here is that Superman is locked up because of the events of the first Injustice, and then they kind of had their wars in the comics and stuff. Yes, some sort of order has been maintained now since... If you don't know the story of Injustice, I guess I should roll it back a little bit. Injustice 1 has an intriguing premise where essentially Joker tricks Superman into thinking that there's going to be this giant bomb coming to the Earth. So what he does is... And it's actually super brutal and super dark. He sprays him with... I want to say... It's been a long time since I've played the first game. I want to say he sprays him with some of Scarecrow's fear toxin or something, but he sprays him with some sort of gas that basically makes him think he's seen... I want to say it's Darkseid, or not Darkseid, Doomsday. And again, I apologize if I'm wrong on this. It's been 5 years since I played that game. But what he does is he essentially goes and he kills Lois Lane, but he also kills his unborn child that's in Lois Lane. And just basically punches who he thinks is Doomsday all the way out through the atmosphere into space. Like, it's incredibly dark. In a way that, like, even DC stuff isn't usually this dark. And that is basically the catalyst for everything that happens in this universe. So Superman is so distraught over what he did that he comes back and he puts his fist through the Joker and he kills the Joker. Like, Joker's dead, and he crosses that line, the line that none of these heroes ever want to cross here. And Batman obviously is the level-headed one here. And he, you know, so they immediately are at war. Superman becomes kind of a totalitarian leader, essentially. He wants to police the entire world. He doesn't want any more wars and everything. Not that any of that stuff is bad. It's the way he goes about it is bad. He stops all crime and stuff through means of excessive force. And so through this, it kind of splinters the Justice League, and you have two different factions. You have the people that side with Batman, and you have the people that side with Superman, and that's what causes the events of them making a fighting game. And you'll sit down and think, yeah, they could have just thrown out a DC fighting game where Batman fights Superman and, you know, Flash fights Green Arrow and vice versa and all that. They could have just done that. But it is the fact that somebody sat down, they made a super coherent story, and they finally did something interesting with the idea of, hey, let's get all these heroes together and let's have them war with each other, but let's tell a really interesting and fascinating story through that. And that's what this game brings, and Injustice 2 continues that story. I think the story of Injustice 2 is more interesting than anything I've seen in this new DC cinematic universe, and I'm not knocking the DC cinematic universe. I'm actually a fan of it, but I don't hate the DC universe at all. However, I think the story of this game, Injustice 2, is such a great story, and it can not only hold a candle to something like the DC Extended Universe. I think the way that they've brought all these characters together for this game is a shining example of what to do on a massive scale. I think it's better than the last two Avengers movies and stuff. Like, it's a really, really good story, is basically what I'm trying to say. Basically, I'll go through a little bit of a history here with this Mortal Kombat and Netherrealm Studios. So, after some very mediocre Mortal Kombat games in the mid to late 2000s, we had, like, Armageddon. One of them was Armageddon. I'm gonna butcher some of these. There was Deadly Alliance. There was Armageddon. There's a third one in there as well, as I can't think. Maybe it was Defiance. I want to say it went Deadly Alliance, Defiance, and then Armageddon, and then finally they did make a Mortal Kombat versus DC game, but it wasn't good. The problem with that game is they tried to write a story that involved both the Mortal Kombat characters and the characters from DC, but those worlds just don't connect. Stuff happened with Midway, and Ed Boon kind of opened his own studio with Netherrealm, and Warner Brothers obviously producing and kind of owning that studio, and they rebooted Mortal Kombat in 2011. Some people refer to it as Mortal Kombat 9, or you can just refer to it as Mortal Kombat, because that's what the title is. That Mortal Kombat game is fantastic. Through the roof. An incredible Mortal Kombat game. I love it to death. I played a shit ton of that game when it came out. I actually played so much with Scorpion that I got that stupid My Kung Fu is Strong achievement, which is an insane achievement to get. But I like that game a lot. I played a lot of online. I really enjoyed it. That's the last fighting game besides maybe Dead or Alive 5 that I really got invested into. But the thing about that game that nobody realized going in was they told an incredible story, and it was the first time we saw them take a fighting game and put a story into it that felt like it mattered. It wasn't just, it is, here's how you get to this fight, and to this fight, but the story along the way was actually interesting. It wasn't just kind of thrown together for the hell of it. So then when Warner Brothers and Netherrealm announced in 2013 they were going to put out Injustice, which is a DC fighting game, I didn't have a lot of hope in it because of Mortal Kombat versus DC was such a disappointment. But at the time I thought to myself, well, if they do this right and they're not putting anybody from Mortal Kombat in it, and it's just DC and they can tell a good story, because the story of Mortal Kombat 9 was really good, that maybe this has some hope. And it was a fantastic story. I will say that I read the comic before it came out, and then the comic was only supposed to last 12 issues. It became so popular and such a phenomenon that it lasted for 5 years. And it, again, like all comics, it has its ups and it has its downs for sure, but it's a really good comic story, and Injustice 1 is a really good fighting game. One of my fears with Injustice 2 is like, man, I hope Injustice 2 looks good, and I'm glad to come out on the other end and say that Injustice 2 looks fantastic. And then 2015, they returned to Mortal Kombat. They made Mortal Kombat X. I liked Mortal Kombat X. I thought it was a good game. The story didn't grab me as much. It had an okay story, but by the time I was out of it, I just kind of jumped off of it because it just seemed really fast that all of a sudden it was like, it came clear to me that they would put out a better version of the game that would have all the DLC fighters, and because of that, because of the way they handled microtransactions and the crypt and all that, I kind of bounced off that game really fast. It didn't grab me like these previous two games did. And it sucks because that game has, as you can see on my shirt here, it has Jason, it has like the Xenomorph, it has a bunch of people, and I haven't gone back to play it. I should really go back to play it, I do want to. But I wasn't as impressed with that game as I was the previous Mortal Kombat game. So going into Injustice 2, it was a twofold thing of, well, are they going to be able to top the story from the first one, and also, am I going to like it, or is it just going to fall down this microtransaction hole? And I'm pleased to say that not only do I think the story of Injustice 2 is the best of any of their fighting games, also the microtransactions, yes, they are in there, but it's not anything near what it was. And we'll get into that here in a minute. One of the things that's most impressive about this game, as opposed to and even Injustice 1, is it tells such a fantastic story of why Batman and Superman are at odds with each other in a way that I think other stories that do that, be it Batman v Superman the movie, even The Dark Knight Returns, which is a beloved comic, I think the story here is probably the best story we've seen of Batman and Superman being at odds at each other, because they've given it the time to flourish and really tell a story, and that's something that you don't get, especially you can't get that in a 2.5 hour movie. For me in Injustice 2, like, I steered clear of a lot of it. Like, I watched the initial announcement trailer, I've seen sprinkles of trailers here and there, but I've stayed away from it because I just kind of wanted to play the game and see what it was like and all that. And I'm happy I did. Again, through and through, this story is good. It's dark. It's darker than any other DC property has been in a while. And again, I don't mean to try and compare this to Batman v Superman, but that's kind of all I have to compare it to. But there are dark parts in this story, and I guess I'll tell one part of it, and this is a spoiler, so if you don't want to see this, jump ahead like maybe like a minute and a half. Or very early on in the game, when the game starts, you and Robin, who's Damian here, but they aged up Damian, which I give them mad props for having the balls to age Damian up, because no one else seems to want to do that. They're hanging out, they're doing their thing, that's obviously the beginning of the game, and he's on Batman's side. And in the game, what happens is he goes to Superman's side because it's Damian, and Damian was raised as an Al Ghul, so he doesn't have a problem with killing like Batman does. That's always been the interesting dynamic there is, he was killing people at the age of 5, and he was trained with assassins. Batman obviously is not about that. And here, what he does is they go into Arkham Asylum to talk to Superman, because that's where he's first locked up. And Damian, to prove himself to Superman, he slits Victor Zsasz' throat, which they actually show, and they show blood in this game, like, more than you would think for a T-rated game. And that part of the game is really dark, and I was very surprised that they put something like that in the game. And it's just a testament to them telling their story And I'm glad that Warner Brothers is kind of loosening the reins on a lot of these things here with Batman, and like, oh no, go nuts, tell your story. And they do a fantastic job here of telling the story. That ends the spoilers of the story. I don't want to spoil any more of the story for you guys. I think you should go out and play it. Again, like I said, if you're a fan of Injustice, if you're a fan of fighting games, if you're a fan of DC heroes, you should play this game totally. We'll talk about some other things here briefly. So obviously for me, the meat of this game was the story. That's why I bought the game. That's why I was invested in the game, was the story. But there's some other great things about it as well. They've added this new mode called the Multiverse, which is kind of like an ever-changing and ever-evolving mode. And it's kind of like the Crypt from Mortal Kombat, but evolved even more, so it can change through server updates, and it changes every couple hours. It's tied to the lore of DC, where there's infinite universes essentially, so there's always crisis on different Earths, no pun intended, and you can pick a fighter and go and you do different missions where you're fighting different people, but they all have different outfits, different looks, different armor. And that's one of the biggest things about this game, is you actually get armor, and you'll get armor pieces, and you can change how your fighter looks through loot boxes. And the loot boxes are obviously mother boxes because it's a DC game. But for me, like, going into the game, and I knew this, that there probably would be some sort of microtransactions revolving around the loot boxes or the mother boxes. We're just gonna call them loot boxes because that's what they are. And there is, like, you can straight up buy loot boxes if you want to. That's how it is. But the thing I will say that is most promising about this game compared to the previous Mortal Kombat game or game by Netherrealm is that here you can buy those outright, but I never felt like I had to. Playing the game and just doing a fight, doing several fights, whatever, I feel like I'm unlocking stuff, and I don't feel like, hey, I should put $5, I should put $10 in to get better armor. You can totally do that, but I feel like that would spoil the fun of the game. But there's a progression system there, and you can level up your fighters, you can change their appearances through loot boxes and armor, there's shaders, there's all sorts of stuff in this game. There's even a couple what they call premier skins, which are just different versions of characters. So like, for example, there's Reverse Flash, so you have to unlock his premier skin, which you just change in the thing. Power Girl is in this game, but it's just a skin for Supergirl, but it looks okay. I think there's also John Stewart, Green Lantern, and there's a couple other ones I can't remember, but there's 6 of them, I believe. The game does offer online competitive matchmaking. Obviously, you can fight online. That's never really been my thing. I got really deep and invested into that idea with the original Mortal Kombat, but throughout my years, especially in more recent years, especially competitive multiplayer online is something I've kind of bounced out of. I just don't care anymore. Not a big online fight. I did play some online fights in this game, and it works really well. The netcode is extremely strong, and if you're into that for a fighting game, you'll have a good time for that for sure. And for fighting games, I'm more about playing other people that are sitting next to me or something. Like, that's the fun of a fighting game for me. It's not online. Like, online connectivity has never been my thing. But it is an option that's here, and it's done really well. So if that's what you like and you're into that scene, this game will be worth it. They've also announced the first 3 of the 9 fighters. I'm going to be honest, I don't remember. I think one of them is Starfire, and I think it's Starfire, Red Hood, and Sub-Zero, which is cool. I'm fine with one Mortal Kombat character in the game, and last game had Scorpion, so... And that's fine. I'm glad they announced 3 of them. You think $40 for 9 characters, definitely that's like, what, $5, $6 a character? That's not bad. For me, I'd rather just buy them as they come out, if I'm invested enough still in the game. And that was my thing about Mortal Kombat. I wasn't, you know, after a month, I just wasn't invested anymore. I waited and waited because I really wanted Jason. I'm a huge Jason Voorhees fan, and I was really excited about that, but they took too long to get that character out, and then by the time he came out, I was kind of already checked out of that game. And for me with Injustice, like, I probably will see, I might just wait until they do a complete version and get that and trade this one in, like, we'll see. But overall, that's enough of me rambling. My point here is that I really like Injustice 2. I think it tells a fantastic story. I like at the end of the game, you can kind of choose the ending you want between 2 different characters. I won't spoil who those are, but it's a cool aspect of this game, so you'll get a different ending, and it'll be interesting to see. I know they'll make another Injustice. These games are super successful. I'll be interested to see with what ending they go with for the beginning of the 3rd game, and I'm sure they'll continue to do their spin-off comic and stuff like that. But anyways, guys, 2 thumbs way up for Injustice 2. If you like fighting games, you should really pick it up. It's really good. And especially if you like DC, you'll have a blast with this game. Anyways, remember to like, share, and subscribe to this video, subscribe to my channel, and have a good day. Till next time.